Amazingly, there are those out there that aren't getting on with composting. So this video is a basic guide to some of the alternatives. Even if you live in a flat in the middle of a town, there are things available to you. Let's start with this. A simple bucket with a lid. It's enough for your basic food waste and the remains of your dying pot plant. It's called a pre-compost, and if you had a wormery, you could keep your food scraps in it for a few months before feeding it to the worms. Does it smell? It can if you accidentally add liquids to it or you close the lid for too long. Any nasty smells come from anaerobic decomposition. Anaerobic decomposition? Things decomposing without sufficient air or oxygen for you budding scientists. I kept my aloe vera plants alive with something like this for nearly 15 years in a flat. Using a bed of sawdust at the bottom, just in case there are any liquids that form, and adding sawdust on top if you do sense any smells incoming, you can gain for yourself quite a bulky fertilizer. In fact, I usually produced far more than I could ever use in my flat at that time. I used to mix it with potting compost and a handful of soil from the top of a molehill whenever I was potting up a new plant or repotting an old one. There is a risk of some pests getting into it, but if you keep a close eye on things, generally it works. I can only really liken it to having your first pet. Why? Because ultimately it's a bacteria colony, and if you don't give it what it needs, it gets sick and dies, and dead things get pretty smelly. So why have I spent over 2 minutes discussing kitchen scraps in a bucket? Because amazingly, so many principles of decomposition, composting and waste recycling can be learnt from looking after scraps of food in a bucket. And what have you lost if something goes wrong? Just throw it out, it's dirt, and start again. As for garden waste, I start with something like this, a simple laundry bag. Suitable garden waste chopped up into smallish pieces that I can later use as a mulch on a garden bed. I keep a bigger builder's bag in my garage nowadays, and when the laundry bag fills up, I dump the whole lot into this. It means that I have mulch available whenever I need it. Critical question? Does it smell? No, as long as you keep it reasonably dry. In fact, like good compost, it has quite a pleasant smell. Who knew? Here are the remains of all the branches of a conifer tree that I've been taking down. Yes, I needed a pair of loppers for this. Secateurs just wouldn't do it. However, it had the advantage of firstly creating a path, and secondly creating a habitat. This and other things will be discussed in part 2. But first, a question for you. Were you really paying attention? If you were, why was it important to keep this garden waste in my garage dry? If you were paying attention, it's going to be easy. Thank you for listening. See you in part 2.